If you remember me saying this last time, this can be made just as easily out of 2x4s. Today we're going to do just that. We'll use a total of 3 boards, all the length of the fence plus 1.5 inches. 2 of the boards will be the height of the fence, one being a 2x4, the other being a 1x4, while the last board will be the height of the fence plus 3/8 of an inch. It should go without saying how vitally important it is that these boards be straight. Spend the extra time in the lumberyard finding the perfect 2x4 as we are creating a new fence. Like the other video, I found the center of my fence to set up a stop block. We're going to want to cut 6 inches into our 2x4 that's slightly taller than our table saw fence. We'll set the cut to be at the same height as our fence. As before, we'll attach our hinge. The hinge I'm using is both 2.5 inches wide and tall. Carpet tape is an excellent way to keep our hinge from moving as we drill and screw it on. We'll measure 5 inches in on the kerf we cut and drill a hole for a 5/16 inch hanger bolt. Using the jam nut technique, we'll lock a couple washers together. I glued the 1x4 against a taller 2x4 with a kerf in it before throwing some brads into it. Be especially careful around the kerf. Getting any glue on it could be a problem. When that was dry, I drilled a 3/8 inch hole into the 1x4 for my fence clamp, something I'll add you must have for this jig. I've made a video to make one for less than $5, which I've included in the description. One final thing we'll add is a safety bar made out of aluminum. In the previous video I used aluminum. In this version we'll be using 12 gauge 3/4 inch plate steel. I rounded the end, but it's entirely optional. Next we'll go about a 1/2 inch in, find the center and give it a punch before heading back to the drill press. It's really important to get the hole the same size of the screw shaft you're going to use so that it doesn't shift around. I use a number 12 by 1 inch pan head sheet metal screw and 11/64 inch drill bit here. Because it was an extremely tight fit, I had to work it over with my drill to get it on, and then let it spin for a little bit to grind away the bit of thread at the top. Because I knew it was going to want to loosen up when I moved the steel bar, I used some epoxy to glue the screw into the hole. And so that my plate steel didn't get attached to the top of my jig, I used a very thin shim washer and screwed the screw in enough that I could still move the bar. With the tip of my finger and a pencil, I made a long pencil line on my 1x4. This part is crucial and the extra addition I wasn't able to add to the last video. With this pencil line in the bar, we're now going to put coordinates for making precise cove sizes. Now you're going to want scraps. Lots of scraps of flat wood, preferably plywood. I got this pile of wood for less than $3 at a box store in their cutoff bin. So ask around. To get an accurate measurement system on our steel bar, we'll go through a method of trial and errors to find the 1 and 2 inch mark. We'll zero our circular blade on our table and go through a number of rotations to find both. With my saw, I started with the table saw crank handle up and went through 5 different rotations, cutting each rotation. It is important to understand how dangerous it is to start with the blade too high when you make any cove cuts. Start small, go big. Once we find our 1 inch mark, we'll go to the line drawn and use a steel punch at the pencil mark and then label 1. At this point, with 5 rotations of the table saw crank, we'll have a 1 inch wide cove cut. Now we'll find through trial and error again the 2 inch mark. Oh, and I didn't mention this earlier, but make sure that the metal bar is pressed up against the hanger bolt before locking the handle down. After both marks have been found, we'll measure between the two and find that it's nearly at 9 inches or about 22.5 millimeters. With these measurements, we know that at about 9 inches we'll have a 1.5 inch mark. Any future size can be divided between these 2 points to find exactly how big our coves will be. As an example, I divided the 2 in half and found 1.5 inches. It's not a perfect system, but it cuts down on the guessing. After the marks are found and punched, it becomes a repeatable system that makes finding coves simple.